Well, hello there, and welcome to the Naptime Chronicles. I'm Andrea, and welcome to the Valos. So it's 2:38 on a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, and my son is sleeping, and I thought I just want to sit in my robe and chit-chat. But since I'm here alone going crazy, I thought, why don't I have a series called Naptime Chronicles, where I talk to you guys about questions that you've asked me on YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, all of the above. So I'm going to pick a topic every week and sit down and chat with you guys about whatever it is you want to hear. And it's only right that I give a little shout out to my Snapchat where I have Naptime Turn Up, where you get to see me do a little shoulder twerk to all your favorite songs. So I'm just saying. So let's jump right in. So today's topic is brought to you by Anastasia Glow. Hey girl. And she wanted to know if I could do a video on my experience of breastfeeding so far. So Anastasia, you ask and you shall receive. So my son was born on August 30th and he is 4 weeks old today. And he was born via emergency C-section. If you don't know about that, click that right there. But since he was born via emergency C-section and was brought to NICU, I did not get to do skin to skin directly after he was born. So one of the benefits of skin to skin is that it's that mommy baby bonding time that does give your baby an opportunity to latch for the first time and kind of get that bond established. I did not see my son, hold my son, anything until about 8 hours post-delivery. Now at the time, I was just so concerned about seeing my son, making sure he was okay. It didn't even cross my mind about the whole breastfeeding aspect. Now me, I was 100% sure that breastfeeding was not going to be an issue for me. I was like, you know what, my breasts have been leaking colostrum since I was about 20 weeks pregnant. Like, the supply is going to be bountiful. I'm going to have no issues. Everything's going to be perfect. The issue is that I was thinking about me. But what I didn't think about was him. So even though I was having a lot of milk and colostrum, that had nothing to do with the fact that this little guy has to be able to get to it. So when it was time for me to breastfeed him, I didn't know what to do. I've watched a lot of different YouTube videos about how to get your baby to latch, you know, what are the different techniques for breastfeeding. So I felt prepared going into the situation until I was holding him and I was like, what? So I actually called the nurse in to show me how to get him on the breast. And she was like, you just put it up to his mouth. If he latches, he latches. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And I was like, you're useless. We ended up being friends, obviously, because I'm irresistible. But so obviously that wasn't a very good explanation on what I was doing. So I was just kind of trying to figure out as I go, trying to remember techniques that I had seen. And I had pretty much figured that squishing my boob between my fingers, so it was kind of like a sandwich, and putting it up to his mouth was going to be the best technique for him because he has a very small mouth. I did that and he latched on, and it was a great latch, and he sucked for about maybe 2 to 3 seconds, and then he unlatched. So I was like, okay, so I'll just latch him again. And he sucked for 2 to 3 seconds, and then he unlatched. Now this continued on for the entire time. So I would be trying to feed him. I had colostrum. He was just not able to stay latched for more than a couple of seconds at a time, which is not a good way to eat. So at one point, the nurse comes in and says, you know, he's probably going to need to be supplemented with some formula until we can figure this out. I'll have the lactation specialist come see you in the morning. So we ended up having to give him formula that night. The next morning comes along and the lactation specialist comes in and she says, how about you hand express your colostrum into a cup, and then you'll take a syringe and feed him via the syringe. So I hand expressed the colostrum. They were like, wow, you have so much supply. This is great. You know, this is, you know, half the battle. So we did that and we were giving him the food via the syringe. But here's the issue. Since he was fed formula that one night, that is a lot more volume than colostrum. because colostrum is just very nutrient rich, but it's not a lot of volume. It's not going to fill up his belly like the formula did. So even though he was getting what would be considered a lot of colostrum, he was still hungry because he was accustomed to that volume now from the formula. So even though I was giving him a lot of colostrum, he was still hungry, still crying, still fussing. So we ended up having to supplement him with formula for the majority of the time we were in the hospital. The last day of my stay at the hospital, my milk came in. By this time, you know, he was still only able to latch for a couple of seconds. So I hand expressed the milk into a cup, did the syringe, and gave it to him that way. When we came home, I was obviously, you know, a little frustrated. I really set my hopes high on being able to breastfeed, but I was being optimistic because I had just come out of the hospital. I had just learned a lot of lessons about having a plan and expectations and how those change, especially in motherhood. So I just did my best to kind of just push forward and figure out what is the plan, what am I going to do to feed my son. So I decided that I was going to pump. And I was going to pump and bottle feed until we could figure out what to do about latching. So from the first day that I pumped, I got about 2 ounces per breast, which I was really pleased with because he was eating 2 ounces at a time, which meant that every time I pumped, I got 2 feedings out. But I was still pushing forward with how was I going to fix the latching situation. So a couple of days later, I had been attempting to breastfeed, and then he would get too frustrated, so then I would give him the bottle, because you don't want to continue to feed the baby via your breast if he's really frustrated, because that's going to make him not want to be on the breast. So you just have to make sure he's relaxed, he's calm. I was trying it when he was sleepy. I was trying it when he was, you know, just kind of showing signs of how you don't want to get yourself into that situation, because that's a whole nother issue. So a few days later, I'm looking at him. He was yawning or crying or something where his mouth was wide open, and I noticed that my son had a lip tie. So I had seen a lot of things on YouTube about lip ties and how that can really interfere with the breastfeeding process, and was trying to figure out, okay, now what am I gonna do? I was trying not to get into a space where I'm like, all hope is lost. He's never gonna latch. I'm just gonna exclusively pump, you know, there's no hope. I was like, I need to figure out what is the best thing to do. You know, I was in a space where it's like, he's had so many bottles. Now we might run into the issue of nipple confusion, which luckily I have not experienced at this point. So I did some research online. I did want to see the lactation specialist again. And I plan on doing that, but for the time being, I was just kind of doing research as I do and trying to figure everything out. So I went online and I saw that nipple shields could be a good solution for babies, you know, with lip ties. So my husband went to the store and bought a couple of nipple shields that I used. I got the 16mm one, and I just used that, attached it to my breast, and he was able to latch. And he was able to latch for much longer amounts of time, which was excellent, because that was the biggest issue. Was he can get a nice big latch. He opens his mouth really wide. He can do the nice slow drawing motions. You can see his jaw kind of moving, but it was only a couple of seconds. So now that he can latch for a little bit longer at a time, and he was still unlatching, and I would latch him back, you know, for it started at he could latch for 10 seconds, 12 seconds, all the way up to 30 seconds, but he was always, you know, consistently unlatching. So I was kind of working between the nipple shield and the bottle, and every once in a while I would try to do my bare breast. Fast forward to about a week ago, my nipple shield had fallen off while I was feeding him, and I just tried to put my bare breast back in his mouth, even though he had been feeding with the nipple shield, and he latched right on. Like, he didn't even notice that the nipple shield was gone, and he's been feeding from my bare breast since and latching really well. So he only has about a couple of bottles a day at this point, but he is mostly fed via my breast. And I'll tell you, that was like a very stressful journey for me, but everything is kind of working itself out now. I am very fortunate. I have a lot of supply, and I do absolutely nothing to increase that supply other than drink a lot of water and take my prenatals. So I have no idea why I have this supply. My breasts have been leaking since I was 20 weeks, so there's always been, you know, stuff going on here. I have, at this point, I can get up to 5 ounces in each breast out, and he eats about 3 ounces at one time at this point, so there's a lot of excess. So if there's about 7 ounces floating around any given time, and when he latches on and my letdown happens, I have sprayed him up his nose, in his eye, like it comes out fast and furiously, and if he's not ready, then it's going down everywhere. Everything, my sheets, my clothes, my bras, everything is just covered in milk. I smell like milk. I look like milk. I am milk at this point. Like, I am milk. So here are the things that I would say you need to know about breastfeeding, especially for babies with lip ties. Number 1, be patient. You have to be patient. I know that, especially first-time moms, you have a lot of expectations and you want things to go a certain way, and you don't. I know as a first-time mom, I had a lot of expectations and I wanted things to go a certain way. That's not how the shit works out. Even though he could only latch for 2 seconds when he was first born, doesn't mean he's always gonna be able to latch for 2 seconds, because now he's 4 weeks, which is still a newborn, and he just latched for 45 minutes earlier, and he's perfectly fine, and he's getting a lot of milk. Second thing to note, nipple shields are a good alternative, but they are not the ultimate solution. Use nipple shields to help you get your baby accustomed to latching onto your breast, but always have a strategy on how you're going to get him off of the nipple shield. The weaning process can be done numerous ways. I kind of did the bait and switch, had him latch onto the nipple shield, then halfway through the feeding, ditched the nipple shield, and then had relatched him. Some people do nipple shield on one breast and then latch him onto the second breast without the nipple shield. And some people, you know, just do cold turkey, where they just stop one day with the nipple shield and see how the baby does. Next is learn about the different resources you have and leverage them. Talk to your lactation specialist, ask your friends who are moms, join a mommy group, use YouTube, online forums. Look everywhere and just figure out what works best for you and your baby. Next, giving your baby formula is not the end of the world. If you have to supplement or exclusively use formula, that's what you have to do. Your baby has to eat, and it's okay. Formula has come a long way, and it's pretty close to the real stuff. So there's nothing to stress about. Your baby's gonna grow healthy and strong, so don't worry about having to use formula. You have to do what you have to do to feed your baby. To all the mommies out there who have babies with lip ties, you can breastfeed your child. You can breastfeed your child. I know there are different things that you can do to kind of encourage that. I use the nipple shields. Some parents take their child to the ear, nose, and throat doctor and have the lip tie clipped. I opted not to do that. I come from a school of thought where less is more, so I did not feel the need to clip his lip tie. He has been able to latch just from doing those few things that I've discussed. So sometimes I'll give him a bottle for 1 ounce, and then I'll give him the breast, so that it's, you know, he's kind of in a calm state. His belly is a little bit full, so he can relax and really, you know, focus on latching onto the breast. Just make sure you're keeping it a very peaceful and loving interaction. If he's crying, if he's squirming, just calm him down before you attempt to give him the breast again, because you don't want to ruin that experience for him. And the last thing, and the most important thing, is that breastfeeding is hard. But we're moms and we're warriors, and when stuff gets tough, we just double down and we get it done. So that's it for this episode of Nap Time Chronicles. Make sure you leave a comment down below on what you would like to hear about next week. And while you're down there, you might as well hit subscribe, you know? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.